Hannah McGregor is an incredibly insightful writer. They draw from personal experiences existing in a fat and queer body. With roots in southern Ontario, they recall a childhood in their straight Catholic household, finding themselves drawn to a sense of sublime in environments unreachable to them. In their case, they've always had a sense of awe and wonder when looking at dinosaur fossils and recreations of environments from our world before it was destroyed and reborn. Clever Girl Jurassic Park is a text that analyzes the Jurassic Park movie and franchise under many different lenses. The key themes of this text are really hard to narrow as McGregor uses the movie as a jumping off point for numerous important and interesting topics. Some key themes that I've pinpointed include monstrous femininity, which is something that I'll dive deeper into. There's also voyeuristic fascination with monstrous and non-normative bodies. There's wildness and tameness. There's also power and desire for control over nature. And towards the end of the book, the author talks more about apocalypse and chaos, citing their mother's death as something that made them gravitate towards apocalypse media and just chaos in general. I personally really enjoyed this one quote during a section in the book that's focused on monstrous femininity. It reads, "When we cannot find ourselves reflected in the heroes and protagonists of stories, we instead learn to see ourselves in the villains, especially in properties where villains tend to be queer-coded." This is on page 27, and this quote perfectly encapsulates to me what McGregor's journey was like in finding forms of personal representation. It's clear that their different childhood experiences, growing up as a kid both queer and bigger than majority of their peers, has alienated them from being treated delicately and with respect. One instance they describe playing a horse game with their friends and always being forced to play the horse every time. This is an instance that also aligns with the animality of the female dinosaurs. It's very on theme. On page 30, discussing their childhood, they state, quote, I wanted to be a pretty princess and was aware that I was not and probably never would be. So this secondary quote I bring up just because it additionally backs McGregor's perspective. The reason that they relate to the female villains as well as dinosaurs, it's not because they themselves is an evil, vindictive, bloodthirsty person. The reason they relate to them is because they're more representative of McGregor's otherness and their queerness, more than any frilly, happy, and free representation that was given to them previously in their childhood and in their adult experiences. It's highly likely that if McGregor was given positive queer-coded or plus-sized, quote, pretty princesses, or heroes, or beloved characters, then they would identify with them. With that being said, although the connection they feel with these villains does not stem naturally from loving darkness or being evil or having vitriol, McGregor's life experiences with judgment, stares, teasing, and othering, these experiences they've felt from childhood to adulthood, they tend to create a feminine and queer rage, and that tendency to push back against the system that judges her. This quote to me does a lot to contextualize the nature in which McGregor shows respect for the dinosaurs. Those dinosaurs that, to the viewer of the movie, are murderous villains. It justifies the dinosaurs being powerful females to embody a queerness that's encapsulated by different forms of rebellion, with an insightful example of the queerness recalled by McGregor as the moment in the movie where there are two feminine sides of a buckle on a seat that the character of Grant is sitting on. Grant ties those two feminine ends of the buckle together, solidifying the moment and the movie as queer to McGregor. McGregor's added lens of queerness within the quote leads me not only center queerness in my personal favorite chaotic villainous characters, but it really clarifies their affinity to the movie and to the dinosaurs. It clarifies it immensely, in my opinion. With this quote, I feel like it's safe to say a lot of feminine villains aren't loved because of their evilness, but they're loved because they refuse to be victims in an environment that centers the opposing view. So my question to the class is, do you have any evil or villainous or murderous characters that you feel empowered by watching, or that you kind of feel a little bit guilty about liking or respecting or resonate with? And how have your personal experiences allowed you to connect and identify with the character in a sense that's deeper than the character's direct evil actions. Personally, I gravitate towards the character Pearl from the movie Pearl, mostly because of her feelings of isolation and repression, and I just feel tender towards the hysteric, like desperate longings and actions to making her dreams come true. And with that, thank you so much for listening.